Hello, my name is Anjani Segrist, and today I'm going to be reading a Synastry Astrology chart. And to get started, first of all, I always like to call in sacred space, so whatever that means for you. Today I didn't feel like lighting sage or incense or anything, so I just sprayed a little aromatherapy in the air just to sort of clear the space and call it sacred. Then before I do readings, I always do an in-depth calling in of sacred space. But for you, just whatever feels good to dedicate this time to paying attention, watching, and learning your synastry between Stacy and Derrick. So this is what this is the way I do my charts. I basically print them out and color all over them. So this one here, basically what's happening is that in the center is, in the middle here we have Stacy's on the outside, so Derrick is on the inside. So this is his chart, and here we imagine this is him being born, and this is a map of the sky the moment Derrick was born. So I like to just kind of place this over my head and, get a real good feeling, tactile feeling for this being the map of the sky when he was born. And then here on the outside is Stacy. So I do them both ways because we can see from this chart the way that she would be activating and influencing him. And another thing is that I don't take this literally. I take this as a sort of a way to connect with parts of our psyche and parts of our consciousness. And each of these planets represent a part of our own psyche. So in that way, it's sort of like a living mythology. So that's Derrick on the inside. Here is Stacy on the inside. So again, that's her, the moment she was born. And this is where the planets were the moment she was born. So we just superimpose that in the sky and get a good feel for where everybody was sitting at the table, so to speak. Sometimes I like to think about it like that. So you can imagine like mythology, gods and goddesses, or, I like to keep it simple with parts of our psyche. So then here's Derrick on the outside. So I'm going to get more specific into, because this is very detailed, and we can look at this in so many different ways. And what I'm going to do today is give a sort of a basic reading. And then the next thing, which I like a lot, is here's Stacy, her own chart. And then here's Derrick's, his own chart. And then here's a composite. So it's a mathematical way that the computer program that I have and that many people can access, puts together both people and then makes a chart. It's called a composite chart, which would show the sort of identity that the relationship has as its own entity. So I really don't pay a whole lot of attention to the composite. Some people love it. And there are a few interesting things that we can sort of gather from, like we all know that when we get into a relationship, it is like, this is how I normally am and this is how he normally is. And then when we get together, this third thing is created. So that's what the composite chart shows, and it can be useful at times. For today, I'm going to mostly focus on what I like the most, which is looking at each person as an individual. And then there's a sort of equation that we can sort of use to understand how to understand him, how she can understand him more and relate to him in a healthy way, and how he can understand her a little more and relate to her in a healthy way. So let's start off with Stacy. And looking at her moon position, that tells us a really good idea of her lineage. So the moon tells, the moon and the south node together give us an idea about what characteristics Stacy was born with. Like, as an emerging human being, we all have certain traits, qualities, characteristics that our mother or father would be able to easily identify as we begin to grow in character. So she has her moon in Cancer, and the south node is in the 8th house. So we call this a Scorpio job in the Cancer tribe. Cancer moon people, especially women, this is, I also have a Cancer moon. So I wrote a really good article about this because it's really interesting how our society has accepted and even rewarded women for the Cancer traits, which would be taking care of the home, cooking the food, taking care of the kids. It's very loving and nurturing. Cancer moons are, it is just a loving, nurturing, automatically the mothering, innate mothering comes out with Cancer moon position. And this is only one way that a woman can express. It's something that I'm really fired up about, and I'm working on a project now called Redefining Gender. So say if she had her moon in Sagittarius, which is a fiery, questing for truth, on a mission, and she's a little girl born with that, it's like not really, we like the Cancer moon position. So for women, and if they don't have that, we still kind of groom them and want them to be the Cancer moon, which we're not. All women are not Cancer moons, and having loving, nurturing, we authentically want to give, which is what Stacy has, is her Cancer moon. So just making a quick point that not all women have that. Some women are an Amazonian goddess who wants to go out and conquer the world, and we, can honor them for that. So I sometimes want to say lucky for us with the Cancer moon that we actually display those traits and qualities that are highly prized in our society. But sometimes it's not so lucky because we're learning about something new. So for Stacy, she has Aries as the rising. So this is what she's here to learn about. Over here in the 1st house, I've highlighted here is who am I? And over here is who are you? So from the moon position, when she's, we want to honor her for the moon position 1/3 of the time. So, wow, your food is really great. Your home is beautiful. I love the way that you take care of your kids. I love the way that you take care of me. Thank you for, all of these things. Like, that's her innate quality. But for more of the time, you want to be, because the rising sign is what we're progressing into. We're learning about the mystery school that our rising sign is in. So for her, we call it the Taurus job in the Aries tribe because the North Node is actually in the 2nd house. So I'm not going to pay too much attention on the nodes, except for to say here that the South Node is what we're going away from. And in Vedic astrology, it's something that we desperately should avoid because this is our addiction in Vedic astrology. In the way that I'm holding the South and North Node is that it's a polarity. And we are already masters of the South Node. We don't need to hang out in the South Node arenas. And we do want to be moving toward the North Node. And this is talking about characteristics, activities that we're doing. Sometimes I like to talk about it like feeding a particular archetype. So for Stacy, having the North Node in the 2nd house, it's about learning how to take care of the physical body, learning what it means to be in a body. It's all about pleasure. It's all about being in healthy receivership. So coming from a giver moon, learning how to do from the North Node, learning how to be in healthy receivership, this can be challenging for her. So something to take note of. And So her main mystery school that she's learning about is Aries, because her rising sign is over there in Aries. Who am I? This is where she's investigating, who am I? And for a couple, this is called the relationship axis. So what Derrick would want to know is to honor her 1/3 of the time for her Cancer moon. And next, you're going to want to honor her for these things. And also knowing that this is where she's going to be not so proficient. So learning how to be a fierce protector. Probably she already automatically is a fierce protector of her boys because she's a mother with a Cancer moon. And with Aries rising, it will be something that she feels responsible to. So not saying that every mother with Aries rising would feel fiercely protective of their kids. It could be, my teacher has Aries rising, my astrology teacher, and she says that she feels that she's fierce, and she's got kids, she was a single mother of 4, fiercely protecting this information and making sure that it gets out to as many people as possible. She wrote a book. She's amazing. She does all these tele workshops and that, so it doesn't have to be the kids. It can be anything. That's what she's learning about. So for her inner feminine, that's what we look at next, inner feminine, inner masculine. This gives us an idea of who she is as a woman, embodying the goddess. What form of the goddess is she embodying? So she's got Venus in Virgo, and she also has Mars in Virgo. So let's stick with Venus first, defining or giving us some ideas about the form of the goddess that Stacy is representing. So Virgo as a Venus, this is considered the high priestess, the one who is deeply connected to the timings and rhythms of the earth. And I know Stacy, we went to school together, so I have a really, just flooded with memories of like, that makes perfect sense because she, set up some rain or some outdoor shower so that she could like save the earth, basically. I mean, everything that I'm remembering is like she had rocks all over her house before it was cool to me. I love crystals now, but I wasn't into it when I knew her. It's like, okay, she's got rocks everywhere. She has like the main focus was her house and getting it ready and having a house. And she's way a lot younger than me and had a house way before I would ever even think of having one. But that just speaks to the, what I'm reading from the chart. Virgo as a Venus is going to be holding the rhythms and timings as sacred. And we call this the high priestess because they are in tune with the earth, with Gaia, with the mama, the big mama. And as an emerging feminine, because then you look at the rising sign in Aries. So we put these two together in an alchemical blend. We have Aries and Virgo. She's fiercely protecting the Mother Earth, fiercely protecting the rhythms and the timings of what is sacred. So Derrick wants to know that because, okay, obviously he's going to see these things in her. And now it's like, okay, now it's not just some weird thing that she does. It's like that's what's emerging as the feminine. Next, we look at what's the masculine within. Everybody has an inner feminine and inner masculine. And for women, the inner masculine defines what we most wish to connect with in the other. So if Stacy was into women, this would be, what kind of woman she wanted to be with. So just because it's Mars doesn't mean it's the men she wants to be with. It's what we most wish to connect with in the other. So I call this the inner lover. I'm single all the time, so that might be, the way I work with it is that we want to feed this from the inside so that we are not projecting it out, because ideally we are whole and complete. So we're feeding our masculine from the inside. So she's got Mars in Virgo and the descendant is in Libra. So who am I? Who are you? And then the Mars is over here in the sign of Virgo. So we take it, put them together, Virgo, Libra. Combine them together to get an idea of what is the form of the masculine, or what is the form of the God that she most wishes to connect with. And this is really going to be somebody who is relational, because Libra is a relational sign. He's honoring and validating everybody's point. So at a dinner party, he would be listening, observing all the conversations, and it's like a validation of, he's not going to be argumentative unless it is to make sure that everybody's being heard. This is sometimes a mediation type of energy. So mixing that with Virgo, he's also going to be very diligent in his work, very organized. With Virgo, we say that we find God in the details. So their path to enlightenment is finding God in the details. So that's the form of the masculine that Stacy is most drawn to, most wanting to connect with. Somebody who is relational and who is also, I'm just seeing work ethics, has good work ethics, is, we say in the Navy, minding his P's and Q's. It's a term that came up a lot when I was in the military. So, you know, quality assurance, checking, making sure that it's going to, like, if she gives him a job to do, like, hey, will you help me with fixing the table or building a table, let's say that, because that's a very earthy thing, which Virgo is an earth sign. He is going to make the best table ever. It's going to be lined up and everything is going to be just right. Everything's going to be perfect. They are perfectionists. They can be a little cool, a little calm, and so this is what she most wishes to connect with. But as I'm saying this is her. This is her inner masculine. So, and I've seen her doing these things herself, like building these things. And she is very cool. It's not like dispassionate. It's not like she doesn't have passion, but she is a very, like the Virgo. She's got Virgo for Venus and for Mars. And it is very cool. So it's not super attached to emotions. But with having Aries rising, she is learning how to be fierce and warrior-like. Warrior-S, we'll call it. So that relationship axis, which is, again, who am I? This is where we investigate ourselves. This is where we investigate the other. This relationship axis, we call it, it's Aries and Virgo. And what traditionally, this is a traditional type of relationship. What they want is a traditional connection where I always think about the Cleavers and Leave It to Beaver, where it's like the wife is doing this and the husband is doing that, and they're a real unit. They really are longing for, or for her, on a relationship. The relationship axis answers the question, why on earth would I ever want to be in a relationship? For this particular pathway, it is about conscious, co-creative relationships. And they do a lot of things together. She wants to be together. It's like they're looking, with this relationship axis, looking at your partner is the way that you find enlightenment. It's the most important thing. It's one of the most important things for somebody with Aries rising or Libra rising. Then you still have that same relationship axis. So let's look at Derrick now. And Derrick has the relationship axis. So I'm kind of gonna go not in the same step by step. We're going to start with the relationship axis for Derrick. He's got Capricorn and Cancer. So the most important thing to him, when he's asking himself, why would I ever want to be in a relationship? For him, it's all about the home, building structure, building a foundation. A lot of times when people have Capricorn on the rising, they're always learning how to be the boss. having that wanting to be the chief, wanting to set the structure for the next 7 generations, and being concerned with laying the foundation. So in the relationship, they don't have the same relationship axis, which isn't important. It's not important at all. It's just nice for each of you to know that for him, it's going to be really important to the relationship that the house is in order, that the structure is set, and that maybe he's dictating in some bit of a way. So let me start off with his moon so that I can get really clear too about some of the priorities for him. So he also has the Taurus job, because you guys have the South and North node on the same axis, which would say the same thing. Like what he is already really, really good at is opposite to what you're already what Stacy's really good at, because the South and North node are flipped for you guys, both in the 2nd and 8th house, but just flipped. So for Derrick, Taurus job in a Gemini tribe. And this is what his lineage is, or what he's already mastered, the skills and traits that he would have been noticed for as a little kid. And with the moon in Gemini, these guys, they can be tricksters. They can be naughty as little kids, little boys especially. And they, Gemini moon makes up stories, so as a little boy, he might have been a storyteller, and sometimes it's like they're lying. The mom will say, well, he's lying, but it's just because he's really creative and he's making up a story. So for Gemini, that whole thing, Gemini moon, and this is, the lineage, and really what's important is to know that and honor the moon. But we're paying more attention to the things that are progressive for each other. So it's just, I find it to be interesting that people with Gemini moon, as little kids, they might have made up a lot of stories and got labeled as being a liar or a fibber or whatever, but it's actually it's a beautiful thing. It's really creativity, and they can use that for, imagination, manifestation. Gemini moon people are good with, they're tuned in. I don't want to say more so than the rest of us, but they have a higher degree of being able to access imagination. So then the Taurus job, it's the same thing. It's being able to be a healthy receiver. So as a little boy, he might have been able to, it was a natural thing for him to get stuff and to be playful, funny, jovial, lighthearted, very childlike. And we can say that all children are childlike, but not all children are childlike. Stacy might not have been. She's got a Cancer moon. She might have been, as a child, playing dolls, playing house, being taking care of the family, making food as a little girl. Like I started cooking when I could touch the stove and pulled up a chair to wash the dishes. Like these are naturally ingrained in us at some level. So she might not have been childlike. Gemini moon, completely childlike as a kid. They're very childish, childlike. So then the next thing we look at is his inner masculine. So the form of the god that he is representing is Sagittarius. So for him, the sword that he carries, his sort of bravado, has to do with, it's I'm seeing like intelligence, like really having a high curiosity and intellect put together, go out and search for truth, wanting to know as much as possible and keep on learning, keep on exploring, questing for truth and expansion, ultimately for evolution. That's his Mars. For the feminine, we look at, and then for men, the inner feminine tells what he most wishes to connect with in the other. So this is sort of like his image of, and of course it's not 100% of the time accurate. I find it to be accurate, but it's not saying that if Stacy's not a representation of his Venus. I'll get to that because that, it can be a thing. So but it's not for him because he's got Venus in Virgo and Cancer on the descendant. So she fits perfectly his inner longing for what he wants to connect with in the other. So I'm going to throw it in like what if it wasn't in just a minute. But his Venus is in Virgo, descendant in Cancer. So what he would be wanting to connect with would be the priestess, the woman who is hands in the dirt, knows the timings, the rhythms of nature. Think of what a high priestess does, what a priestess would do. She's tuned into the sacred, everything that has to do with the divinity of being on earth. Very ethical, work ethics, and organized. And where I'm getting the Cancer thing is because here is who am I? This is what he's exploring as who am I, learning how to be the boss, be the chief. And over here is who are you, the descendant. So he's going to have this as part of what he wants to connect with in the beloved. So she has a Cancer moon. This could in some sort of ways hold her in the Cancer moon roles because he really likes those things. But it's important for both of them to know that she needs to be progressive. She needs to be progressing and doing more of the Aries things because that's what she's learning about, fiercely protecting, and also Scorpio job in the Cancer tribe. So I didn't really talk too much about the North Node in terms of progression. But with a Scorpio job, she's really learning how to hold the life force energy, to be most energized, tapping into the source of energy and running that clear energy through her body. And his North Node is in Taurus. He's learning how this together is called the pathway of Tantra. So you guys both have that tuned into that. You can definitely use that. That will be fantastic for both of you. His is more about receiving pleasure and holding the moment of pleasure for as long as possible. So what I was going to say next is that say she doesn't have, she does. She has what he wants. They fit. The problem that I mentioned that possibly she could be held in that Cancer role longer than what would be beneficial for her evolution. So that's where this becomes important. Like, okay, I need to be doing more of these things. And he is going to honor her for the beautiful food in the house and being loving and nurturing, and also paying attention to where she is. Obviously, the Virgo thing, both of the partners have. So I'm sure that you guys already are naturally honoring each other for how wonderful you are able to be in tune to the sacred timings and the sacred work. And maybe if you guys could do sacred work together, would be a beautiful thing. But to know that, when she's feisty and fiery, like, yeah, you go girl, like, get it, because that's what she's learning about. And for him, he's learning how to set the structure. He might sound like a dictator at times because he knows everything. That's the thing about Cancer rising. They know everything and they want to be right. And a lot of times they are. He has good ideas about where things should go in the house and how to, what you should do with your work. They often will tell us a lot more, even if we're not asking them. Capricorn rising can be a know-it-all at times, but they're often very right. But it's good to remember to keep that in check because she is learning how to be a fierce warrior. She might be mean sometimes. She might be, because that's a Aries quality. And I say mean like it's not a bad thing. It's like short, brief, to the point, quick. That's what I mean by when I'm saying she might be mean sometimes. Okay, so I spent a lot more time on that than I wanted to. I did want to mention a few things from, there's so much to mention on here. I'm going to point out the few most important things. And the way this works is that the person who's on the inside gets stimulated in a way. So he's got Pluto activating her Mercury. Pluto is a planet of the underworld, the deep, dark, shamanic realms. Sometimes in synastry, we'll look at Pluto as sexuality, what really comes through in the sexuality. Mercury is the way we communicate, so he might be activating parts of her that get her thinking about, perceiving, and expressing some deep stuff that, and it might have to do with relationships because it's in the sign of Libra in the 7th house. So his Pluto is activating this communication thing for her. I really wanted to mention this because I saw this as an interesting, this is her Saturn, which is the part of us that is disciplined, structure oriented, can be constricting at times, is going directly over a part of his, it's Uranus, which is our most spontaneous, freedom loving bit. The way I saw this was like, oh, it might be good to know that sometimes the part of him that wants to be spontaneous and radical change agent might sometimes feel a little bit constricted. And it's not even like she's trying to, it's just by nature of the chemical reaction between the two. So it might be something, let me know, send me a message and let me know if you do, because that's honestly the first thing that jumped out, because Saturn is one of the main things we look at, because in synastry, it is the glue that holds the relationship together. So I looked for that and I saw it exactly conjunct his Uranus. So that also goes to, there's also her Pluto and her Juno are going over his sun directly. So Pluto, again, being that dark, mysterious, shamanic realm, intensity and passion. Juno is showing, we call this a marriage indicator, and that's directly over his sun. So that would be really activating the sun in astrology is the fuel that we burn. It's our overall style and flair. So it's almost like the shadow comes, and activates. And so I can see there's many other Pluto aspects on your guys' chart. So it seems highly charged with intensity, sexuality, and passion, which is really good. Both of you guys having so much Virgo that can be cool and calm a lot of the time. Looks really interesting to me. So I'm going to end here. I hope that made sense. Let me know. Ask any questions. I would be happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching and for letting me read your charts.